Live from the chicken wing capital of the world, Buffalo, New York. You're listening to the Childcare Bridge podcast, your source for the best tips, tools, and tactics on how to market and grow your childcare center, ensuring total domination. Total domination. This is the Childcare Bridge, and this is your host, Michael Tasner.
Hey there, and welcome to this week's edition, the last episode of 2024, where we're going to finish out lesson 3 of 3 on how to conduct strategic annual planning. So first off, if you haven't listened to the last 2 episodes, I highly encourage you to listen to those first. Everything builds on one another. Today we're going to talk about how do you actually conduct the meeting. How long is it? Who's there? On-site, off-site. I'm going to give you all the logistics of how to properly execute this very, very important day, or in some cases, multiple days. So in the last 2 episodes, it was all about gathering intel, and more importantly, gathering intel from all of your team, your directors, your teachers, your chef, the janitor, anyone that plays a part in your childcare center business, giving you feedback. What projects worked well? What didn't work so well? What should we look at for 2025? What do we start doing? What do we stop doing? And gathering all of this feedback to the place where it's ranked on a document with unbiased feedback. And I talked about this whole unbiased feedback concept many, many times. You do not want to get to a place where you're loading in content, and you already have things starred and said, well, these are what I believe are the top 5 things we need to focus on. Send it to your team. Can you let me know which 5 you like? You want to make sure that everyone is able to give you that blind feedback so that it is unbiased. And what that then is going to do is it's going to show you and your organization how aligned are you? How aligned is the feedback that you have, your directors, your teachers, your assistants, everyone that's giving that feedback, how aligned are they? And the easiest way to see if your team is aligned is based on what they believe are the priorities. If this long list has 50 different things that are starred, and there's really no rhyme or reason as to which are the top 5, you have some massive misalignment within your organization. And if you have massive misalignment, your first order of business is to look at how long you've scheduled your annual planning for and to double it or even triple it. Because if you're not aligned and you're walking in, what ends up happening is you start steamrolling. You start rolling over everyone because you've got all these different ideas, and at the end of the day, someone needs to make an idea into reality, and someone needs to take that idea and say, this is now a priority. But if you steamroll over your team, it's going to show them that, yes, you asked for their feedback, but did you actually want their feedback? Do you actually value their feedback? So as you've got all of this feedback, all this information, you want to look and see how aligned are we? Now, that doesn't mean that there might have 50 things that have 1 star, but you're hoping to start to see that a couple of particular trends on the start doing, the stop doing, a couple of the key projects when they said, well, here's what worked this year, and we think we need to go here. We need to accelerate this. We didn't finish out that. You'll notice those particular items hopefully have some alignment. So step 1 is if there is no alignment, you need to take a couple of steps back and say, when do we actually want to conduct this? Because you're going to need to add some extra time. So what else do you do if there's not alignment other than just extend out your meeting? Well, what I'm looking for you to do is to kind of have a pre-strategic planning where you throw these things up on the wall and you start to ask different people why. And you don't ask them why in the sense of like justify why you said this, but give me some more, like, why do you believe that these are the priorities? Why do you think these are things we should stop doing? And as I've done this exercise, if I don't see that alignment, usually, not always, but usually it's the people that are rating some of these different things don't necessarily have all the information, or they don't understand the full impact one way or another. So you'll start to hear things like, wow, I didn't realize that optimizing for ratios in each of the classrooms could actually make that large of a difference on the profitability of this childcare business. And I now want to change what I had suggested based on that information. So what I like to do is I like to then have that session, and usually it's about a half a day session, where you're showing the findings and the feedback, and you're just pushing it back to the team and say, let's talk this through and let's get some alignment before we really go into this full-blown strategic annual planning. Because if we're walking in with all this misalignment, it's going to make all the different activities a lot more challenging to bring to the finish line. So that to me is step one. Now, the only other time that I've seen massive disalignment outside of people don't fully understand what the particular item is or the business impact one way or another is if there's something massive that's going on from a culture standpoint, or there's some elephants in the room. There's something going on. And in those cases, it's a tough nut to crack. Because if you put people in the room and you say, well, why are we so misaligned and what's going on, and share some things with me, a lot of people, they're going to be concerned about their jobs, rightfully so. If they speak out in an open forum, you know who's saying what. You think someone's going to say, center owner, I don't feel like you're ever here and you really care about the business, so what's the point of voting on these different things? So I just voted randomly because I really don't think you care about the business. You think someone's going to say that to you with a straight face? I guess it really depends on where you live, and a lot of other factors. So if you have a feeling, and you usually, like it's not often a massive surprise. When I've done this exercise with centers, it's not like they're all, oh my God, Michael, I expected that everyone was going to be completely aligned. Usually they're going to say, well, we've had a bunch of hiring mishaps, or we've had this happen, or we had to lay a bunch of people off. We just closed a center. We just opened 5 locations rapidly and everyone's overworked. Usually there's some reason for the misalignment. The other thing that you can do is to solicit more feedback. And that, to me, it is the easiest of option, where you're continuing to do the anonymous feedback, and it's more open-ended questions. What's on your mind? Give me some more insights as to why you pick these things. What can we really change? Is there a root issue you're seeing? Get some more open-ended feedback so that you can at least go in and start to move the needle and aim to solve as many of those items as possible. So you do not want to walk into your strategic annual planning with massive misalignment. If there's slight discrepancies, all good, but if there's massive misalignment, you want to get that corrected and have a little mini planning session before. Now, what do you do from here? So for me, I like to do one full day. Some childcare centers, they make an entire week of it. Sometimes they make 2 or 3 days. Personally, I recommend a day, but if you have a very, very large staff, usually you're going to break it into 2 days. Now, who do you actually invite? And that really is another one of those it depends questions. I like to have any of my senior leadership team at this particular meeting. I have my directors at the meetings. If I have team members that have been with me for quite a long time that know the business inside and out, they know me, they know the industry, I'll often invite them to the table. But I never have the entire company. I don't shut down all of our locations. I don't recommend you shut everything down. And that's another reason why I tend to recommend keeping it to 1 day, is I know how hard this is. But it's a balancing act of you've got to get yourself aligned and you've got to have your priorities for the next year, but you can't also have your team out of office for 3 days in a row. I prefer to go off-site. I never like to do anything on-site. I never like to do anything at a corporate office. I like to do it off-site, whether that's at a hotel where they've got a fun conference room. You're even paying for everyone's night the night before so they can be fresh. You want to make this into something that they actually look forward to rather than a chore. You want to have great food, great breakfast, lunch, dinner, for example. You want to have the room arranged in a way that's going to be fun and collaborative and not look corporate. How do you do that? You've got fun little things on the tables. You've got kind of, what the heck are they called? Like fidget spinners and fidget toys on the different tables, different colors of pens and different notepads and stickies. And you want to create an environment and an atmosphere that looks a little bit more fun and a little bit more different, so that you instill in your team this is going to be a fun day of learning and growth. But I like to go all out on the food. I want to make sure that everything is pre-planned, so there's no like miscellaneous surprises by way of logistics. The logistics have to be dialed. You've got to make sure that every single thing that you're going to potentially need is there. Everyone's got their computers, for example. The internet is all dialed in. If you're working off of a projector, however you want to run that particular strategy piece is up to you. Everyone does that aspect a little bit differently. I'm a huge fan of the gigantic Post-it notes, the poster size Post-it notes. And they're extremely expensive. I'll often buy about $500 worth of those. And we use those to put all the different priorities and such that we're going to talk about. So I know I'm talking through a lot more of the logistics, but all the pre-planning stuff, gathering all the information, ensuring alignment, that stuff is a lot more important and a lot more, not underutilized, but it's often skipped. Like people just now, let's just go right to the annual planning day. Let's just get ourselves aligned and power through. Get all that other stuff done first. Solid meeting place, off-site, so it challenges their energy. You just got a little bit of a different energy, but definitely never in a conference room in any of your locations. Never. Too many distractions. It makes it very, very challenging for getting this day done. So from there, the format that I like to follow is I always like to start off with some gratitude. So you could say, let's go big, let's be in gratitude, B-I-G. And I just want to hear all the amazing wins. I want to hear all the great stuff, what worked this year. I want them to pour it on, personally and professionally. Give me everything. You want to start the day with lots and lots of fun wins and just move that needle forward. If you feel that the team has a little bit of misalignment, I often will bring in some kind of outside consultant or someone that's outside to do a little bit of an icebreaker exercise or even a little bit of a team bonding exercise. But that depends on your culture and how aligned and kind of is everyone vibing. If the team isn't fully vibing, again, I will do some things like that before we get into the meat and potatoes of the actual content. So, and we've done things from a magician to someone that just challenges your team a little bit, but they do it in a fun and respectful way. So you've got some gratitude. You start your day off with that. You've obviously got all the breakfast, nice breakfast. They're well fed. Meeting room looks great. Then what I move to is sharing all of the feedback that everyone had shared over the last couple of weeks. We say, does anyone have any other feedback based on what we're seeing? Is anything way out of line? Is there anything that we missed? And you shouldn't get a ton of feedback here, but you want to ask that particular question. And from there, what I'm looking for you and your team to do is to look at what are your rocks for the entire year? What do you want to accomplish? And the rock has to be something big. It's not something tiny. It could be changing up the curriculum. It could be opening up X amount of new locations, adding X amount of new enrollments, massively raising your tuition, rolling out a tool like ProCare or Brightwheel, for example, overhauling some of your existing locations. What you're looking for to pull out from all of that feedback, what are the big rocks that you're going to tackle for the year? And from there, it gets a lot easier. You then break it down by quarter. And I personally am looking for, most importantly, what is going to happen in Q1. So you've got these rocks, so what are our rocks then for quarter one that tie into these bigger rocks? So let's just say you want to add 500 enrollments across all your locations. How many enrollments are you aiming to add January, February, March? Let's say 100. Great, so you've got the rock for 100. Then you move on and you go to your next rock. I like to set between 2 and 3 rocks per quarter. Sometimes I'll do a fourth, but usually the fourth is a fun bonus one. But I want to know, what are we working on in Q1? And then from there, there's going to be who actually owns the rock. And then what are all those like activities that are going to happen? And you don't need every single little detail, but I want to know who owns the rock. Do I own it? Does a director? Does one of these teachers? Someone else on the leadership team? Who owns each of those rocks for Q1, as well as for the overarching year? And then you work as a unit to look and see, how can you ensure that those things are going to happen? What are the little tasks? What are the bigger tasks? Who's doing what by when? If you're leaving your annual planning with a plan for your rocks for the year, the rocks for Q1 boiled down to activities, you are in an amazing place, and you can get that done in one day. And what ends up happening is, because you did all of this pre-work, that's more of the work that you could be doing in person, but you get it done ahead of time in more of that anonymous setting, which is what I'm looking for. So you end up flushing out all the different ideas and all the potential issues to where your rocks become pretty obvious. Usually they're going to be a couple of the things that were on the start doing list, or they were on the project list from this year of, we're going to accelerate, we're going to add to this, finish this, do that. The stuff starts to come out naturally. I like to use my strategic annual planning as more of a bonding event with the leadership team. But I want to make sure that we're leaving aligned. So you're never ending a meeting, okay, great, well, does everyone know what they're doing? I think so. Great, good luck. Great, Sarah, you own this rock. You're committed to having it done by March 31st, yes or no? Yes, got it. And you've got the list, and you're going to work with these 6 different people. You're going to report back every single week during our weekly leadership meetings on the progress, on track, off track. That is what I focus on with my strategic annual planning. Is there other stuff that you could be doing? 100%. You could be deep diving into all the financials and ratios, and you could be deep diving into your marketing plans and marketing budgets and looking at copy and all of that stuff. You can definitely do that. But my philosophy is that stuff that should be done all during the course of the year. You shouldn't be saving everything up for a 1 or 2 day event once a year. You should be looking at your marketing. You should be looking at your financials all year long, to where the strategic annual planning is more of an exercise to set your rocks for the year. That is how you effectively do an annual planning day, not a week, not a 2 or 3 day event. Unless, like, what else are you going to be doing? And I've had a lot of centers that say, Michael, one day just isn't enough. And then I'll push back and say, how many meetings do you have during the year? If you're having structured weekly leadership meetings, none of this stuff should be a surprise to you. You should be largely aligned to where you're in that rhythm and routine of setting it, and the annual is simply that. It's just an annual meeting. It's not a meeting that needs to, like, everything needs to build up to that one particular meeting. So if you were thinking there was this gigantic agenda, think again. That's why we did all the prep work. You gathered all that feedback. You've got it all. You walk into the meeting organized to where your team knows that you have things ready to go. And what you as the owner are doing is to ensure alignment across your team and to ensure that they feel good about these rocks and say, I've got it. We've got it. That's what you do. You wine and dine them. They feel good. They're excited. And you get back to work. Have a great rest of the year. Merry Christmas, Happy Festivus, one of my favorite shows, Seinfeld. Happy Hanukkah, happy holidays. So grateful for all of you that listen every single week. Michael Tasner signing off for the last time in 2024. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night. I'll see you next year.